Last night, Iran fired 400 ballistic missiles at Israel. Not 40, not 100, 400, in a single night, and Israel fired 350 interceptors to stop them. The missiles still got through. I have spent decades studying military campaigns. I have never seen an adversary deliberately engineer economic attrition at this scale. Iran is not trying to win battles. Iran is trying to bankrupt a defense system. And last night, they proved the math works. Stay with me, because at the end of this video, I am going to give you a number that no one in Washington wants you to calculate. 850. Hold that number. At Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, F-16 Fighting Falcons are being prepared for combat sorties. Ground crews tow aircraft out of hangars. Fuel trucks connect and fill tanks to capacity. Mechanics run through pre-flight inspection checklists, removing intake covers, checking landing gear, cycling avionics. Pilots are fitted for G-suits, specialized flight gear that inflates automatically during hard turns, squeezing the legs and abdomen to prevent blood from draining from the brain at 6 or 7 Gs. Without the suit, a pilot blacks out in seconds. With it, she stays conscious through combat maneuvering that would incapacitate an unprotected person. The canopy seals. The single Pratt & Whitney turbofan spools to full power. The F-16 accelerates down the runway, presses the crew back into their seats, and climbs hard into the desert sky. 3,500 Marines arrived this weekend, aboard the USS Tripoli. The USS Boxer is en route, carrying more than 2,000 additional Marines. At Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the 82nd Airborne's commanding general has been ordered forward by the Pentagon, not his staff, the general himself. HIMARS rocket batteries are positioned along the coastline within range of Kharg Island, Iran's main oil export terminal. V-22 Ospreys are fueled and staged on the flight line. The assault plan is ready, and the troops are briefed. Washington Post reported this week, the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of ground operations in Iran. Secretary Rubio said publicly that no ground troops are needed. Those two statements cannot both be true. Now let me walk you through what happened last night, wave by wave. Because this attack was not random, it was engineered. Wave 1 arrived at 2:07 a.m. Older Ghadr medium-range missiles. Liquid-fueled, slower, relatively predictable. These were not designed to reach their targets. They were designed to force Israel to fire arrow interceptors. Each arrow cost $3.5 million. Iran was draining the magazine before the real weapons arrived. Wave 2 launched at 2:45 a.m. Khaybar Shekan solid-fuel missiles with maneuverable re-entry vehicles. These adjust their trajectory during descent, forcing defensive systems to recalculate intercept solutions continuously. Each one costs Iran between $200,000 and $500,000 to produce. Israel was now firing 2, sometimes 3 interceptors per incoming missile because the first shot was not connecting. Wave 3 hit at 3:40 a.m. Fattah 1 quasi-hypersonic systems. Terminal approach speeds exceeding Mach 13. At those velocities, the intercept window collapses from minutes to seconds. Radar operators reported tracking missiles covering 2 kilometers per second. By the time the intercept order was issued, the missile had already moved past the engagement envelope. Wave 4 arrived at 4:10 a.m., targeting civilian zones. A warhead struck an industrial complex in southern Tel Aviv, triggering secondary explosions visible 20 kilometers away. Another impacted 2 kilometers from Ben Gurion International Airport, close enough that all flight operations halted and terminals were evacuated. Israel's Arrow system has a maximum standing inventory of approximately 288 interceptors. Last night they fired 350. They burned through their entire standing Arrow inventory and more in 4 hours. Interception rates that started at 85% dropped to 60% by Wave 4. Not because the systems failed, because the operators were exhausted, the stockpiles were depleted, and the threats were arriving faster than targeting computers could process. Here is the economic math that makes this strategically unsustainable. Iran spent approximately $140 million on last night's attack. Israel spent $700 million defending against it. That is a 5-to-1 cost ratio in Iran's favor. If Iran sustains this tempo for 30 days, Israel burns through $20 billion in defensive munitions. Israel's entire annual defense budget is $24 billion. And there is an intelligence dimension that should alarm every American watching. Iran's last 24 hours also included a precision strike on a Ukrainian anti-drone system that had been moved into the theater, along with the Ukrainian personnel operating it. That level of targeting specificity does not come from satellite imagery alone. Knowing that Ukrainian equipment was repositioned, knowing its operational signatures, knowing the grid coordinates of personnel who just arrived, that knowledge exists in depth in only one country. Russia has been fighting Ukrainian forces and studying Ukrainian military systems for 2 years. Russia knows their equipment signatures. Russia knows their deployment patterns. Russia is not a sympathetic observer of this conflict. Russia is feeding targeting data directly to Iranian strike planners. Israel's air defense posture has shifted. Rather than attempting to intercept every incoming threat, the IDF is now making triage decisions. High-consequence targets receive interceptors. Lower-grade threats are increasingly allowed to impact because spending $3 million to stop a $200,000 missile no longer makes strategic sense when the magazine is nearly empty. Switzerland ordered American-manufactured interceptors months ago. Those deliveries have been redirected to operational needs. Even that redirected supply is running short. Now, the number I told you to hold, 850. That is how many Tomahawk cruise missiles the United States fired in the first 4 weeks of this conflict. The United States produces between 40 and 60 Tomahawks per year in peacetime. 850 represents somewhere between 15 and 20 years of peacetime production output spent in 28 days. Qatar has suspended natural gas exports to any country involved in the conflict. Brent crude hit $180 per barrel overnight, a 12% spike. Goldman Sachs revised its forecast upward by $15 this week. Every day this continues, the number climbs. Your heating bill, your gas tank, your grocery receipt, these are not abstract policy outcomes. They are the end of a pipeline that runs from the Strait of Hormuz, through the Persian Gulf, through global shipping markets, directly to every household in America. The math that is destroying Israel's Interceptor stockpile is the same math that is moving your energy costs in one direction. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. When the Washington Post ground operations story breaks into public confirmation, or when the next 400 missile night arrives, this channel is where you come for the full picture. Now tell me, if Iran can sustain a 5-to-1 economic advantage on every exchange, how long before the United States has to choose between defending Israel and defending Taiwan? I read every comment below. Hello, I'm a retired general. Welcome to my channel. I'm here because what you see on the news tells you what is happening. I'm going to tell you what it means, as someone who has read intelligence assessments and been inside decision-making rooms. One more thing before we begin. This channel uses its revenue to fund student scholarships. If you subscribe, like, and comment, you are directly supporting that mission. Please hit subscribe now and turn on notifications. Now let's get into it.